Welcome to another episode of the Two Shots Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Garcia, and today we are going to be joined by an all-star cast. We're going to be joined by RJ Marquez of KSAT 12. Hey, RJ, how's it going?
It's going great, Joe. I really appreciate you having me on here, and I love the stuff that you've done in the past. So yeah, this is going to be fun. I got a good feeling about this one.
Yeah, thank you. And also, we're going to be joined by the one and only, the OG, Jeff Garcia of News 4 San Antonio. Hey, Jeff, how's it going?
Hey, Joe, what's going on? It's been a long time since we spoke, huh? Haven't it?
Yeah, we speak.
We just spoke last week. Yeah, every day. Yeah. But yeah, thanks for having me on. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. You and RJ, it should be a good show.
Yeah, it's going to be a good show. You know, to me, it's a treat to be able to bring together two esteemed people of the media, members of the media together so we can go ahead and discuss the ongoings of San Antonio Spurs basketball. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and jump right in. And we're going to go ahead and kind of recap the Spurs' last three games. And they've been, I don't know how to say this in a nice way. The Spurs have been consistently inconsistent. We go back to their Wednesday game that they had against the Warriors, and they dropped that one, and they looked pretty bad in that game. They just came out flat. They lost that game by a final score of 121-99. Then the next night, they have the Dallas Mavericks, and they dropped that one, a close game, which they came from behind. They had their chances up in the fourth quarter. They were down, I think, at that point by 2 points. They could have made some headway, but it was just not meant to be. They couldn't capitalize on their opportunities. They dropped that one, 122-117. Then they play the Washington Wizards on Sunday. They win that one handedly, 121-101. But the Washington Wizards, they hung in there tough for three quarters. They made the game a little bit more interesting than it should have been. And again, this is a team that really doesn't have a winning record, so the Spurs had their defensive issues in not just these three games, but throughout the season. We've seen the inconsistency, and I attribute this a lot to the growing nature of what's happening right now with the team. This season going in, I knew it was going to be a season of growth. I didn't care what Coach Pop was trying to sell the media. There's just no way that this team, to me, was going to make a viable run deep into the playoffs. They're going to focus on the youth, as he stated, and with the youth comes the inexperience. And I think that's exactly what's happening this season. So we're going to go ahead and start with you, RJ. What have you seen in the San Antonio Spurs through these last three games and also since the start of the season?
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head there. I mean, definitely very inconsistent. I think that we've seen flashes of what can be just a really good team. They've beaten the Lakers, they've beaten the Clippers on the road, and before that Warriors game, they beat Portland pretty handily up in Portland. Of course, no CJ McCollum in that one, but they've had these games where you can see the flat out potential and the talent that this team has. And then they have the game like the first game against Houston, where the Rockets came into San Antonio. They had just traded James Harden, and they were kind of still a mess. And then they had the Warriors game where they fell behind early. The Mavericks game fell behind early. And I was worried about that Wizards game for a while. I was just like, they cannot lose this game. And I think that, like you were saying, is sort of the biggest thing, is learning how to not only beat bad teams, but also just learning to build consistency throughout the year. And it's going to be up and down. We've already seen that. We've seen them, have some really nice wins, and we've seen them have some really kind of questionable losses along the way. And I just kind of feel like that's sort of what we're going to expect the rest of the way. But they are exciting to watch. I will say that no game is ever, completely in doubt, and they're not in fully control of any game as well. So they are a fun team to watch.
That they are. They're fun to watch when they're playing at a high level, and when they're having their issues and they're having their growing pains. That's where it's really tough. And I think Spurs fans are very critical, including myself, because I'm a lifelong Spurs fan. And we have a tendency to go on Spurs Twitter and voice our discontent with the team. And that just creates a domino effect where everybody else jumps in And, the usual suspects are always to blame. LaMarcus, it's DeJounte Murray's fault. And at the end of the day, it really is no one player's fault. Ultimately, it's the team's fault. You can't blame just one player. Oh, let's go ahead and blame DeMar DeRozan because he's not clutch in big game situations. It's not his fault. If the Spurs had actually done a better job, they could have won closer games, but they make mistakes. They don't hit free throws. Again, defensive lapses. Jeff, it sounds like a broken record. What can you tell us about the last 3 games and what your observations have been since the start of the season?
Well, I think in the setup, Joe, you mentioned about how Popovich, was kind of seeking more than just wins and playoff appearances. But I think he's been pretty honest with the media and talking with us. He understands this is a young team. He understands that titles are not in the near future. He all but said it last season in the bubble when he said, this is a young team. We're starting over again. So when he goes out and says, I'm not scouting other teams anymore, because he's focused on his own team. So we know what the situation is in San Antonio. It's a pure rebuild. And I know you mentioned about the last 3 games, Joe, but I want to go back 5 games because sure, maybe in the last 3 games they're 1-2, but in the last 5 games they're 3-2. So they're a smidge over 500. And yeah, there are issues in the inconsistency with the team, with individual players, especially the young guys. But why is everybody surprised? I mean, nobody should be surprised that this is a 500 team right now. And I think that's the way it's going to play out the rest of the season. They got glowing reviews last season in the bubble because that was a controlled environment. That was no back-to-backs, no travel, no busing, minimal shuttle rides to and from their hotel room. And they played well rested in a protected environment, no COVID procedures as we're seeing now. Yeah, they're going to look good. But now they're getting a real taste, these young guys, a real taste what an NBA season is. Now they got to travel. Now they got to do back-to-backs. Now they're getting the team's best foot forward out on the court. So you put that all together, nobody should be surprised this team is hovering a little over 500. And now, it's not all doom and gloom in San Antonio. The future does look bright, and I think it's going to continue to get brighter as these young guys get experience. DeJounte Murray, he's standing out for me. Lonnie Walker, he still has some room for improvement. Keldon Johnson's taking the next step for his development. You're seeing the veterans step up and be that stabilizing force for the team. It is an unpredictable season. You're not going to know if you're going to get the world champ beaters, Spurs, go out to LA and beat the Lakers, or you're going to get the team that wet the bed versus the Jazz and the Rockets. But that should be expected with the team looking to find its identity right now.
Yeah, so looking to find its identity, we're going to start diving in here and talk about some of the fan favorites and some of the youth that have really started making a name for themselves this season. Namely, Keldon Johnson. He's just looked stellar since the start of the season and really making a name for himself and really exciting Spurs fans of the possibility of what is this young kid's ceiling, And then you have Lonnie Walker, who has had trouble in the past, kind of finding his identity, starting to, come into his own a little bit this season, a little bit more, and showing that he can show up and take the mantle, so to speak, when DeMar DeRozan is not in the game, which kind of, I guess, can hint at if we lose DeMar, we do have Lonnie Walker who can step into that role nicely. And then we have the rookie, Devin Vassell. We didn't really know a lot about Devin Vassell. And you look at what he's been able to do this season, and he's played stellar defense. I mean, his defense has been amazing out there on the court when he has minutes. And not only that, but he has a really high basketball IQ, really smart out there, doesn't make a lot of mistakes. He's, I guess, athletic enough, long enough, and quick enough to keep up with some of the better team's guards, or even forwards for that matter. And you just love what this kid has done in his rookie season. While he hasn't produced a ton of points, he does all the little things that are going to get in the good graces of one Coach Popovich. So I'm going to go ahead and start with you, RJ. What have you thought about these younger Spurs players in Keldon, Lonnie, and Devin?
Yeah, I guess if I had to kind of put grades on each one, first of all, I think for Devin right now, to me, it's an A minus. I know that's pretty high up there, but imagine where the Spurs would be right now without Devin Vassell. I mean, it's not like they knew that Derek White was going to be, essentially missed the first half of the season. I think he has done a great job. I think the past 7 or 8 games, he's now had over 20 minutes. So he's obviously gained the trust of the coaching staff. Has that streak going right now where he has at least 1 steal per game. So, and like you said, I mean, he's just a smart player. And I think that's what the staff, and I think that's what Pop really kind of likes more than anything. I mean, Pop will say it all the time, shots are going to go in, shots are, not going to go in, but being able to make smart decisions on the court and being able to just be a heady player, I think goes a long way. And I just think of the fact that we, have not seen a rookie play this much. I think probably going back since Kawhi Leonard. I mean, I can't really think of a rookie. I mean, even Derek, DeJounte, Lonnie, all those guys were in Austin for a while, and Devin's just been great. So I would say an A minus for Devin. Keldon, I give a B plus. I think, going with his nickname, the Mustang, I think he's a little wild out there sometimes, but I love the aggressiveness. I mean, how do you, how can you deny the aggressiveness and the fact that he's willing to take it into the paint? He's willing to hustle. He's always playing hard. So I just love the fact, I mean, Keldon's game has been great. I think it's interesting now that last season Keldon played 17 games in total, and it wasn't until like March when they really kind of brought him, and then of course in the bubble, really kind of brought him along. This year, he doesn't get any preseason work, and right away he's in the starting lineup and making an impact. And I think with Lonnie, it's interesting. I kind of have sort of mixed reviews right now with Lonnie. I would say if I had to grade him, it'd be like a C plus, maybe B minus, because of what you said earlier, Joe. I think that we have seen the talent, and we have seen him step up when DeMar had to go back home for those personal issues. We've seen Lonnie play well, but I sometimes think that he gets in his head a little bit, and he's sometimes lost in the offense. And I think about that Golden State game where DeMar got those 3 really quick fouls, and afterward, when he went out, the whole offense seemed a little discombobulated. I think Lonnie had 2 shots in the first half of that game. I need to see more of Lonnie being aggressive when he has the opportunity, and even just in the regular flow of the offense, because I get the feeling that when Derek comes back, does Lonnie go to the bench? I'm thinking, and then even then, like, where are Vassell's minutes? I don't know if Lonnie is doing enough to maybe keep the minutes, but I love the athleticism, and anytime you see him, you could see the talent on the court, and so I just want to see a little bit more out of Lonnie.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing a little bit more out of Lonnie either. I just think that at times he's a little too hesitant, and when you have comparisons between one Lonnie Walker and not Devin, but Keldon Johnson, one of the biggest differences between their games is Keldon is more aggressive, whereas Lonnie is more of a finesse player because he's using his speed and athleticism to get to the rim, whereas Keldon, he's using his strength, and his big body to just mow people down and then get the and ones or go to the stripe, which I love to see. And you want to see a little bit more of that in the context of the game, especially when the Spurs aren't able to knock down any jump shots, any, shots from beyond the arc. You have to put up points somehow. And sometimes you have to set the tone by being aggressive and putting your head down and getting the stripe. 2 points is 2 points. And if you can get the opposing team's defense in foul trouble, all of a sudden the game starts to open up for you a little bit more. So I think we need more players on this team to play in the style of Keldon Johnson when their shots aren't falling. So I think the rookie's kind of, not the rookie, but the young man is kind of setting the tone for that. Jeff, what can you tell us about the youth in both Keldon, Devin, and Lonnie this season?
Well, I'll start with Lonnie since we're talking about him. I spoke with him preseason, the start of the season, and RJ's been in those conferences with me. He recognizes that he's inconsistent. He said it flat out when he says, yeah, I saw the last few games, I didn't play that well, but look at I did against Minnesota, back-to-back 20-point plus, explosions, and, 25 against Minnesota, and then he goes 24 against Oklahoma City, 16 against Houston. Then you got less than double-figure scoring for about 5 straight games, 6 straight games, and then against Washington he has 16. We pretty much know it's between the years for Lonnie. Popovich has flat out said it when he said we have to remind him that he belongs. And I think that's, in my opinion, I think that's what's inhibiting him to being a consistent player. It's good that he's recognizing that he has those inconsistency issues. That's good. Step one, Lonnie. Now you got to take the next step and do what you're aware of. And I hope that will come along sooner than later. The Spurs definitely need it. And I also wonder this too, guys, if Keldon's emergence has impacted Lonnie's emergence or his development, because it was Lonnie for the longest time. Lonnie was going to be the next. Lonnie was going to be him and DeJounte. Oh my God, we can't wait. And then now Keldon's come along. So touches are going to Keldon now, not to Lonnie anymore. I think he is better suited coming off that bench, leading the second unit and joining up with Patty Mills. But yeah, I mean, if I'm following RJ's theme here, if I had to give a grade, I'm not going to be as generous. I definitely give it a C- right now.
Oh man, Jeff's the Russian judge every time.
Man,
Yeah,
not on the curve.
it's just he's RJ. Help me out here. He's what, in his fourth year now? Fourth, fifth? No, for a long third, I think. No, third.
Right. Well, he missed that. He missed part of his first season because he had that microfracture surgery. But I want to say he was their selection in 2018. I think you're right.
I can't use you're a rookie anymore. I can't use you got an injury anymore. I mean, now he has some time now, and and I think that's what we still need to give him is time. And hopefully with time, he will get a lot better. But yeah, I mean, he besides from the Washington game, he didn't go to the free throw line for 3 games straight. And I know that, Joe, you say he's more of a finesse player. I beg to differ. I think he is more of an attack player. You see him wanting to attack that rim constantly.
But he doesn't. That's my gripe with him.
No, he does. He definitely drives to the rim. He'll try to get it on him. He tends to drive more than he does outside shooting. I mean, he went 6 for 13 versus Washington, but then before that it was 3 for 9 and 1 for 6 versus Golden State. So he definitely is attack. I think he cannot. It's either with Lonnie, he's attacking and trying to get some hoop and harm, or he's at the 3-point line. I mean, that's really what it is. And I wish, I know we don't need another mid-range guy, but I mean, I wish he could just start some sort of consistency on the outside shot. It would help him tremendously. Now, as for Devin, I mean, what can you say about the kid? I mean, he's the number 11 pick. I mean, he's going to get run. I often wonder if the G League did start as normal, would they have sent him to Austin? And I think they would have. I think they would have, at least for a while. But in a weird way, because the G League didn't start in normal time alongside with the NBA, I think this has helped the Spurs. And coming off that bench, he's been instrumental for the Spurs defensively, offensively, 3-point line, smart play, has a knack for the ball. You cannot speak more highly of him than we have on this show, and hopefully he will get better. And with Devin, though, I would love to see him. First of all, put on some muscle because he definitely needs it. But I would also like.
He needs some yeah. I think he will.
Yeah, and with kid, remember he's still growing, so there's only good things ahead for him. So good on Vassell so far. And for KJ, we all said it, everything, so I'm not going to repeat everything. He's been great. He's been the Mustang. Yay, Keldon. But my fear with him though is just that he'll run into a wall. He plays at such a high level, and Rudy Gay even mentioned it recently after a game, saying that. Yeah, he's playing at a high level, but, you got to remind him this is a marathon, and you just hope he doesn't peter out. And because he's been kind of the spark for the team. I mean, he can do a layup, he can do a dunk, he can throw an assist, and he's screaming his head off. There's a lot of games to play. So for me, I just would like to see Keldon just pace himself a little bit more, become a more reliable shooter. We know he can attack the rim. That's great, but pace yourself, get it going, because the Spurs need him as the season goes on if they are seeking the postseason, or at least at minimum the play-in tournament. So for Keldon, definitely a solid A.
Yeah, and I'm just going to point out too, Jeff, I'm looking at the stats just for this season for Lonnie Walker. Lonnie he's played 17 games. He's averaging 12.5 points a game, 1.6 assists, 3.3 rebounds. Field goal percentage is 41.0% or 41%. and his 3-point shooting prowess is at 38.1%. His free throw shooting is at 78.8%. And Keldon, he's 2 points better than Lonnie for this season. In the 17 games he's played, he's averaging 14.2 points, 7.3 rebounds, 2.2 assists. Field goal shooting percentage is 46.3. His 3-point shooting percentage leaves a little bit to be desired, but it's still okay, I guess, at 34.6%. His free throw shooting, 77.8%. So they're both pretty decent when it comes to, hey, if they get fouled, you can pretty much count on them to at least knock down one of the two or both shots, you know? So I like that aspect of both their games. However, when you look at one Lonnie Walker, one of the things that I see him getting a lot of trouble with out there in the context of the game itself is not knowing what to do with the ball when he has the opportunities. Coming off picks, coming off screens, switches sometimes. He kind of gets a little bit complacent, even trying to like step into a three, for example, coming off the break. He still hesitates a little bit, and that hesitation cost him a wide open look. And I don't want him to do that any longer. I want him to be able to have the confidence in himself to just go ahead and take the shot. But I don't know if he takes that shot, is he going to get yelled at when he looks over at Coach Pop? You know, I don't know.
I don't think Pop will yell at these guys for taking a 3-point shot or a long distance shot. I mean, I think he's encouraging it. But Lonnie is just, I like the kid. I do. I mean, I think he has a lot of potential. And I guess for me, if I take off the media hat and put the fan hat on, yeah, I'm getting a little impatient. I like to see this investment pay some dividends. If I'm him, I would love to spend time with Chip England in the offseason. Just work with him. And I think that would do wonders for him moving forward.
What about you, RJ? What's the verdict on Lonnie to you?
I still think, obviously, look, how he's probably like 22 right now. So, there's still obviously a lot more room for growth, a lot more room for development. Going back to something that you just said, Joe, I mean, there's been a lot of times when he's been like on a fast break and you could tell he's very indecisive on what he's going to do. Do I need to pass this? Do I need to just go straight to the basket? It's definitely, I think, a little bit more of a mental thing with Lonnie. He obviously has all the gifts in the world. I mean, and when he is on, I mean, we've seen these flashes going back to last year's the Rockets game. Of course, the 2 games that DeMar missed, where you could just see, I mean, he's got all the skill in the world, and really it's just kind of putting that together mentally. And, when you were comparing Lonnie and KJ's stats, I was thinking about just sort of getting to the line, getting to the free throw line. That's something that DeMar DeRozan has down to a T. I mean, he's one of the top players in the league just getting to the free throw line. I think if Lonnie can maybe kind of incorporate some of that game also, I mean, we're talking about him averaging more than that, because Keldon right now, at least he gets to the line. Lonnie, I don't think he does as much. And again, it's some of the indecisiveness, but it's still really young. I mean, all these guys are so young. It's really hard to have sort of a final verdict on them. I look at DeJounte's progress, and DeJounte's now 24, I think, but he's been in the system for about 5 years, and we're seeing DeJounte kind of really become this fully formed point guard now. So maybe a couple more years, Lonnie's there. And like you said earlier, if they don't decide to re-sign DeMar, I mean, Lonnie's going to have to obviously step up.
Yeah, I think he can step in and take that mantle, and do the best that he can. And in the absence of one DeMar DeRozan, if he does, in fact, decide to walk away from this team, I think the Spurs have a really tough decision to make. Do you keep him if he wants to stay? Or do you finally say, you know what, it's time for us to start letting the youth have their time to shine? And that next player you would assume at this point to step up would be Lonnie Walker. But he's still got to show you something, especially this season. I think Coach Pop is keeping a close eye on him to see how he's going to develop. And, like Jeff says, I think Spurs fans are starting to get a little impatient. But I got to put you all in the hot seat.
No, not Spurs fans. Impatient, no.
Yeah.
I got to put you on the hot seat. I got to ask you a question. And it might be a tough question to answer. What have you thought of the play of one LaMarcus Aldridge? He gets a lot of hatred from the San Antonio Spurs fans just about every game. Every time he's out there on the court, they have something to say about him. And it all stems from defense or the lack of his ability to play defense. As a big man, your bread and butter should be okay. You're going to want to protect the interior. You're going to want to protect the paint. And it just seems like that is not something that ever developed with him, especially when he just came to San Antonio. He's not really known for his defensive prowess, in the low post and the paint. He has issues at times with the other opposing team's big men, especially mobile big men that can kind of create their own shot and kind of draw him out a little bit and hit perimeter jumpers. They kind of at times just blow right by him, spin around or, kind of get him on that first quick step. And that's pretty much it, blow by him. At this juncture, what do you think the Spurs should do with one LaMarcus Aldridge? Should they, in fact, let him go and walk for nothing? Or do you think that a trade scenario, if it's attractive, because teams can get injured, throughout the season, somebody gets desperate. What do you think the verdict is on one LaMarcus Aldridge? Has his time come to an end with San Antonio?
Do you want me to go first?
Jeff?
I'm going to go with RJ. Let's go with RJ. I put RJ
Okay.
now.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Well, okay. So first of all, I don't know what the trade market would be for him. I mean, anything that the Spurs could possibly get back would be, I think anything is better than nothing, than just letting him walk. Now, I think it's been an interesting sort of season for LaMarcus because, obviously the emphasis has been on being a stretch four, being a stretch big. But I agree with what you're saying. I think on the other end, the defense, the lack of rebounding, that is really what bothers me more than him missing shots. And I think he's going to continue to take them because that's what the coaching staff wants him to do. But, I just, when James Wiseman is getting 20 points and dunk after dunk, I mean, I just don't like I don't like where LaMarcus is right now defensively at all. And also just like you said, protecting the paint. I think Jakob is obviously, to me, a better fit defensively for this team right now. So when it comes to his future, I think if they do somehow resign him, it obviously has to be like at a Patty Mills type deal, 10 to 12 million, maybe. I know they have a lot of cap space next summer. I don't even know if fans want that to happen. I don't, it's just, he's a, he's a very conflicted. Yes. Yeah. He's definitely an enigma for sure. And I honestly don't think Spurs fans would be too bothered by him walking at this point. I think if there's one of the guys when it comes to either DeMar or LaMarcus, at this point, I think LaMarcus is probably the guy that Spurs fans will be like, okay, we've seen enough. Been an interesting run, not a great run. So yeah, we'll see you in Portland, I guess, next year. Seems like he wants to go back to Portland.
Yeah, I think the consensus here with Spurs Twitter is bye Felicia. Yeah. So we're going to go ahead and pitch to you next, Jeff. What do you think about one LaMarcus Aldridge and his tenure here with the Spurs and the disgruntled Spurs fans? Do you think they have reason to be upset and want him off this team?
No, they got it. I can see why they're upset. I mean, we all see it with defensive lapses. I think if you look at his game logs, he's gone from 20 points one night to 4 points the next night, 20 points one night, 4 points the next night. I mean, it's just been so erratic offensively and defensively. I believe he's only had one game in double-figure rebounds so far, I think with 10. So, yeah, I can see why they're upset. And you look at the league, the landscape of bigs in the league now, multifaceted, stretch five, stretch fours, and this and that. The Spurs don't have that, and that's the biggest hole happens to be at that 5 spot for the Spurs. They have to go in a different direction. They really do. And LMA, he's a relic. He committed to this 3-point shooting, and we've seen it. I mean, he's taking them. He's not shy about it. But sometimes they fall, sometimes they don't. And when they fall, it's good. And when they don't, then they pile on him. And the Spurs fan base get on him and say, "Oh, what happened to you, LMA? You're going to take these threes and you're not falling." The Spurs really need to address that. And Jakob is as good as he is defensively, he's a liability on offense. And, I think where we was laughing when he hit an outside shot. I mean, that's how poor it is on the offensive end. And with them two, it's night and day. With LMA, at least you're going to get an offense and some defense. With Jakob, you're going to get a lot of defense, but minimal offense. And we can see what the issue is for San Antonio. It's definitely the 5 spot and addressing that. And I think they need to do that in the offseason. I would hope they don't re-sign him. I think they can go in a different direction, whether that be the draft, whether it be free agency. They're going to have a lot of money next offseason, excuse me. So maybe they can turn that, and maybe they can flip some of these guys and bring in a quality big that can do a little bit of everything on both ends of the court. I think that is the direction they need to go. And it's, if you really want an idea of what outsiders think of the Spurs and LMA, well, I'll tell you right now. So I'm going to let everybody know, Joe. I was late to this show before the RJ and Joe had to wait for me. Well, the reason why I was late, because I had some duties with the Locked On Network, and I had to do some stuff with Locked On Celtics. So I asked the Locked On Celtics, how would you attack the Spurs? And I'm thinking, Tatum and Jaylen Brown. You're going to go with those inexperienced young guys, aren't you? The host tells me, no, I'm exploiting LaMarcus Aldridge every time I can in pick and rolls. My athletic bigs like Tice. That should tell you an idea of what the perception is when it comes to teams trying to get a W on San Antonio, is to exploit LaMarcus Aldridge. The Spurs definitely have to go in a different direction. I keep Pirtle, great, but they need to find a better big, and I think LMA is just not going to cut it.
Yeah, a name that I would watch, during the offseason, assuming that the Spurs do go in a completely different direction, would be a guy like John Collins from Atlanta. I think he's going to be an unrestricted free agent, and he's obviously going to probably command a pretty significant salary. But for the money that the Spurs are paying LaMarcus, it's obviously not working out at all. So yeah, it's going to be I don't think, again, Spurs fans are going to be too upset about that one.
Not at all.
But isn't it weird, that I think they have a way above 500 record with LMA on the court?
That's true. That is true. And when he's hitting his shots and those mid-range shots, it does open things up. So again, I think, Joe, you said it perfectly. He's definitely an enigma, and the guys like him. The younger guys definitely do like him and respect him. So it'll be a very interesting decision. Whether he gets moved before the deadline, I don't think so, as long as they're in contention. But definitely over the summer to see what happens.
Yeah, so our focus right now was LaMarcus Aldridge and his lack of defense. Now we're going to go ahead and broaden the spectrum a little bit and get real here. We're going to talk about the San Antonio Spurs, and their biggest obstacle this season has been their inconsistency on the defensive end. We've kind of noticed that even like going back to preseason play. You've kind of noticed their faux pas, their little inconsistencies that they had on the defensive end. And that's transpired, unfortunately for us, into the regular season. Again, I kind of touched on that and said, it's because of the youth and experience of the youth. But we also have veterans mixed in with the youth at times. So I understand that, yes, it could be a learning curve here for our younger players, and they have to really get some games under their belt and get that experience built up to know exactly what to do in the context of playing inside an NBA game against some of the better teams out there in the West and in the East. And not only that, but matchup-wise, sometimes the matchups aren't conducive to us getting that W, whether it be a guard matchup, forward position, or even at the center, as we've seen with Jakob and with LaMarcus, they kind of get exploited at times, as you were saying, Jeff.
Yeah, and if I could, real quick, and I know you got to transition, Joe, so I'm not going to eat up too much of your time here, but the veterans have really steadied the ship this season. I think they definitely have a lot more L's than the W's right now. If it wasn't for the veterans, your Patty Mills, your Rudy Gay, your Marcus Aldridge, and just throwing some numbers out there. You look at when LMA gets 31 or more minutes, the Spurs are 3-1. When he scores 12 or more points, they're 7-2. So he has value there, but it's just what LaMarcus Aldridge you're going to get. And talked about Lonnie being inconsistent. Why don't we talk about LMA being inconsistent?
Yeah, that he has been, but so has the Spurs. The Spurs have been inconsistent on the defensive end. Jeff, do you think the trend is going to continue? And how can they correct their defensive issues as a whole?
Yeah, I think Derek White will help when he does come back, but he alone is not going to be the answer. It just needs to be more collective, more. You look at them when at max power, at full capacity with Derek White on there. It's going to help. He takes the charges. He'll check the opposing team's best perimeter player, Trae Young's or Luka Doncic's. But that's great for the perimeter. But what about the interior? And I think that is something they need to address. LMA kind of does it sometimes, more often than not. No, not often than for sure. But Jakob helps. What happened to Trey Lyles? He can be a defensive liability as well. What happened to the Trey Lyles we saw last season? The ones taking rebounds left and right, double-figure rebounds almost every game. You knock it down the threes, the mid-range shots. That was the type of big the Spurs needed. And so far, we haven't even seen Trey Lyles on the court. But I think they have to go back to the drawing board when it comes to defense. Maybe figure out some rotations. They come out of the gate slow. We all know that. First quarters have been horrible for the Spurs. I'm not a rocket scientist, but maybe because something's wrong with that starting lineup. Maybe there's something wrong there. And you see it on defense and offense. And it's not just simply defense. And now it's gotten better. Last season it was atrocious. This season it's gotten better, the defensive side of it, but it hasn't been corrected. And I still think they need to focus on that as the season moves on, and definitely in the offseason.
Yeah, so I'm going to pitch it to you now, RJ, and I'm going to hit you with some reality here. When the Spurs were playing with the Golden State against the Golden State Warriors, Coach Pop ran something out there defensively called the box and one to try to go ahead and stop Stephen Curry. It did not work, and I wasn't a fan of that. I still see the box and one being run from time to time.
Who are they picking, rolling to death in that?
It's horrible. I cannot stand that. And one of the other things that I noticed that the Spurs have issues with is either they go zone or they go man. And they still, at times, they just can't stop the opposing team. They're shooting beyond the arc. They shoot lights out against the San Antonio Spurs because they get caught ball watching at times. They get caught in that zone defense. And unfortunately, because of the inexperience of the youth at times, they don't know what to do when they get the switch. They lose their man. And at that point, it's all but over. You can see it. It just takes one player out of position, and then the whole defense just crumbles, because all it takes is that they suck them in. They go hard to the rim. Somebody's just camped out beyond the arc, and we've seen it happen numerous times. They just dish the ball out, and it's a three, and that's it, and it starts with one particular person. Usually it comes on the switch, and they don't know what to do, or there's somebody out of position. How can those things get corrected, RJ?
Whew. Yeah, it's a lot of things there, right? That that you have to look at. Look, I think obviously, when Derek White gets back, I think that'll absolutely shore up the perimeter defense. If anything, I think Derek he's again just a smart player. He knows how to read defenses, and I think that's something that is, or it knows how to read offenses. I think that's something that's sort of an underrated quality among the best defenders in the league, is that they've studied enough and they know how to just technically read what an offense is doing, how to take away what an offense is doing. So I'm hoping that Derek can definitely be the guy that kind of gets them back on track a little bit there. The inexperience, of course, sometimes a lack of communication on those pick and rolls, on those screens. We saw Golden State basically put on a clinic against the Spurs defensively. And, sometimes they just don't have, their roster is not made up of quality defenders. I mean, I love what DeMar gives them on offense, but, he's been a liability on defense for some time now. And as we were saying earlier, when Jakob's in, their defense is good. When Devin's in, they're good. But again, Jakob is challenged on the offensive end, and Devin's still learning. So I think that they don't seem to sort of have that that balance right now that I think you need in order to be efficient on both ends of the court. And I think that's going to be kind of the biggest thing that hopefully they can get from Derek White. I don't want to put it all on Derek White, obviously, but I think that is a big piece that's missing right now for San Antonio. So we'll see. It's obviously something that they're going to have to work on, especially if they get into these games late in the season that are really kind of win or go home type games just to get in the postseason.
Yeah, unfortunately, right now, I would not put my faith in the San Antonio Spurs if they're going up against a better team than them, especially somebody who is a little bit more prolific from the offense.
I mean, you still don't know what team you're going to get game in, game out.
Exactly.
If the Spurs, let's just pretend the Spurs are going to play the Lakers right now, and somebody asks you if they're going to win, I could probably say, yeah, I think they probably could. I mean, they get up for the big games. We saw what happened versus Houston. We saw what happened versus Washington. We saw what happened against other lesser teams, depleted teams. I mean, Portland, they got the win, yes, but I mean, it took a while for them to put their foot on their neck and break them. So you just don't know what team you're going to get, and I think that question will be answered as the season progresses. We have a large enough sample size now to kind of get an idea of what this team is, but there's still a lot of games to be played. We still haven't seen a fully powered Spurs team yet with Derek White on the court. So I think once Derek White comes back, and then you start from that point moving forward, wait for a little sample size to develop, and then we'll see what this team is going to be like. And as much as Derek is going to address the perimeter defense, there's still that interior that they got to worry about. As you mentioned Curry, they were picking and rolling to death, Jakob and LaMarcus, and Spurs didn't have an answer for that. And that's why Curry had that great game. Mm-hmm. There are some times where I just think, maybe throwing Devin out there might help in that starting unit. I mean, it would definitely shore up the defense. It wouldn't hurt.
Well, that makes sense because you assume that when Derek comes back, which I think I was looking at the timeline, probably like in early to mid-February. I think if they're telling us it was a 4 to 6 week injury. I thought about that too. Why not just start Devin and start off better, defensively, because the first quarters have just been awful for the Spurs. I mean, we've seen that. The other day, I thought Luka Doncic was going to go for like 60. He had 19 points in the first half, and I was like, okay, this guy's going to have one of those games that you're going to see like on SportsCenter later tonight. But I mean, if Lonnie's going to come off the bench either way, then why not maybe take a chance and start Devin and just see how that goes for that starting lineup.
Just a little bit of an impact of what we're seeing Devin so far. I mean, we like it. We see what he's done on both ends of the court. But we get down to the nitty gritty. The Spurs are 6-0 when he has 4 or more rebounds. The Spurs are 5-0 when he has at least 4 defensive rebounds. Okay. Mm-hmm. When he has 1 or more blocks, the Spurs are 5-1. He provides a defensive punch on both ends of the half court, whether it be perimeter and interior. There's something there with him. Now, is Pop willing to go that route, especially with a rookie? Maybe this year, because this year is different and he is a number 11 pick. He should be able to contribute. He is a lottery pick for the most part. But I think with time and he develops more trust with Popovich, that may still come down the road. But the Spurs, if you look at every category that Devin makes an impact in, the Spurs are well above 500. Even when he just scores at minimum 6 or more points, the Spurs are 6-2. I mean, he makes such an impact that I agree with you, RJ. Why not throw him out there? See what happens. What do you got to lose other than developing him and making him a better player?
Yeah, I think he's going to be one of the Spurs' better defenders when it's all said and done. We could be seeing a Bruce Bowen in the making here. Somebody who's just going to go out there and lock down their defender. I see that a lot in Devin Vassell, so I hope he develops into that type of player.
He has 11 games straight with no turnovers, and I get it. Spurs fans get at me like, well, he's not the primary ball handler. Well, he gets the ball in his hand eventually, and he does dribble, and he does have a back to the basket game, and he does put the ball on the court. So and there's a possibility he can turn the ball over. He makes his 3-point shots. He plays the passing lanes well. This kid has a lot of upside. Lonnie Walker spoke about it too. After RJ, I think you were on that call with me where I asked Lonnie about Devin, and Lonnie was just like, man, this kid is the goods, man. I mean, he really is. And the Spurs, it would behoove the Spurs as the season goes on just to toy. They're willing to toy with the box and one. Why not just toy with something that could work? Devin Vassell.
Yeah, that needs to go back to the drawing board. Don't run that box and one anymore. That's just you're just waiting to get trashed bad.
Yeah, they look confused a little bit. There were a few times on switches where I don't think they knew what was what they were supposed to do. Lonnie was chasing Steph around the court. It was very interesting. But at that point, I think they were down by like 20, and they were just looking for any answer. Not the greatest game against Golden State.
Yeah, and I just think if this is, again, I go back to this, and this is where I, pull my hair out sometimes with the fan base, is you guys wanted the young guys to run. Well, here it is. There it is. Look at the starting line.
Them to win, Jeff. That's what they want. They want the young guys out there, but they want them to instantly have the team winning in championship contention again.
That takes time.
Yeah, Jeff, we want to go honking down Commerce, okay? That's what we
Yeah, I mean, I get it, well, maybe it's because, I'm old enough to remember going to the Spurs games in the Hemisphere Arena. I'm old enough to remember when the upper level was non-existent in the Hemisphere Arena. And I remember those dark days, and I remember the glory days, and I see the rebuild now.
You weren't living unless you were up there in the cheap seats in the obstructed view with the pigeons.
I still remember sitting behind the pillar. I still remember doing that, man. And people don't remember, but they're, because of those obstructed views, they used to have very small TV monitors underneath the overhang. Yeah. And we can watch the game a little bit, but I'm sorry, I'm getting off track here. But anyway, you got to have patience. The Spurs fans got to have patience. This is not going to happen overnight. Now, is there a possibility they're going to go on a 4-game winning streak? Of course there is. Is there a possibility they could go on a 5-game losing streak? Yeah, that's a reality this year. But I guarantee you this, Joe and RJ, you fast forward seasons from now, I bet you those same fans that are complaining are going to look back at this season and say, whew, thank God we had that developmental season. Look at these guys now.
I don't know about that. I think they're still going to have something to complain about. They always do, Jeff. It's Spurs Twitter, man. Come on now.
I try not to get mixed up in that stuff. I just throw it to the wolves. They go here.
Did you get in a LaMarcus Aldridge debate recently? I don't know if I saw that come across my timeline or not. Yes, I thought you did. I thought you said you wanted LaMarcus to go more inside, and you were making the case for maybe not. Okay, I may have been thinking of
that wasn't me, but. I did mention it.
LaMarcus abandoning the 3-point shot.
I did mention on Locked On Spurs. Yeah, I think, okay, RJ, I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah, it's because people heard the Locked On Spurs, and that was like when LMA was having really bad issues from shooting from 3. And I know against Portland, he started knocking him down. But if you just look at the numbers leading up to that, when he's taking 3-point shots and he's not, and playing more inside, he was much more effective just being LMA, just being what he is, that mid-range, back to the basket guy, and that's where you saw the Spurs have success. So on the Locked On Spurs, I was like, well, maybe he should abandon it. Maybe he should just, hey, it was a nice try, we tried it, but let's go back to your bread and butter, what works. So yeah, RJ, I think that's what you're referring to. Yeah. And that's why Spurs fans are like, no, you're telling him to abandon it. No way. But you would think there has to come to a point where it's not working and it's costing the possessions. It's costing times for the other opposing team to have the ball and go and hit a 3-point shot on the Spurs. It was just an idea. Spurs fans heard it, and well, RJ saw what happened.
Yeah, they came after Jeff, but it happens, But I want to get back to one thing here. I'm going to ask you both about this because we were supposed to have a game against the New Orleans Pelicans, and it just didn't happen. Last minute, cancellation. And they didn't really mention specifically, like it was so-and-so who had, let's say, maybe a contact with somebody who had COVID or, per the NBA protocols. Whatever happened, at the end of the day, the game was canceled. And now I see that Jeff, you were having a discussion with one of your buddies who does the Locked On Celtics, and they were kind of saying that even the coach from the Celtics was a little disgruntled, like, hey, I don't know if I want to go over there because of, the close proximity to somebody with came
Yeah,
in contact with COVID-19. Yeah. So tell us a
can't
little
blame
bit
him.
more about that.
Yeah, you can't blame them because the Celtics are just coming off a week-long stoppage because they had their issues with the virus. So no, I mean obviously that's just I think just as a human being you don't want to go where there's fire. You want to avoid the fire. The Spurs seemingly thought they had the fire, but luckily they didn't. But the good news is though is that when the game was postponed, the Spurs went back to San Antonio almost immediately. That's good because if there need to be any quarantine situation, they would have happened in New Orleans. Look what happened to Eubanks and Hammond. They stayed in LA and quarantined. So we know something was there. This situation, they allowed the entire team to go back to San Antonio. So yay, that sounds like nobody is sick. And I think there was a report that it wasn't an individual player. It was just a non-staff / player that had it. It was close contact with both teams. The NBA is going to do this. I mean, they're going to take they're taking this thing seriously, and good for them. I think postponing games, as much as it sucks, and you don't get to see Silver and Black do their thing on the court. Well, it's better that everybody stays healthy than not, and especially when you have a 70-plus-year-old coach on the sideline, Popovich, who's taking it seriously. He's wearing his mask constantly. RJ, you hear him. Before we get going, he asked the PR people, "Do I leave it on? Do I take it off? Is it okay?" So he's very conscious of it. So good on the NBA and the Spurs to doing the prudent thing. Now, Spurs fans should not be surprised if it happens again. It's going to happen again. And you just got to roll with it. And I think that's what the NBA is doing. I don't think there's going to be another bubble. I don't think there's going to be some long delay, as they get these things sorted out. The NBA is going to plow through us, and they're not going to stop. But they got to stop this whole all-star game business. I mean, no, just let it go. Just let the guys rest. Take that time for these guys to be quarantine procedures and taking tests versus putting them back in harm's way.
Yeah. So coming to you, RJ, the only other time that I can remember in recent memory where a Spurs game was canceled during the regular season was the game that they had when they were going to play in Mexico. And they couldn't play that game because the arena caught fire. There was some type of fire there and the whole arena was covered in smoke. And they had to go ahead and postpone or cancel that game for that particular day. I believe it was replayed at a later date. I don't know if it was ever played in Mexico, but I think it might have been played here in the States. But that's the only other time I can remember when a Spurs game was canceled or postponed. And here we are again, with the pandemic. And then, of course, we get word right as tip is coming, around that, the game has been canceled. I mean, what were your thoughts?
Well, yeah, that's the part that really kind of surprised me through what transpired yesterday is that I know that Jeff was probably also ready to hear Coach Pop. He gives a media availability an hour and a half before a game, when they're on the road, and the home coach does it an hour and 45 minutes before a game. So I don't know if I was logging into Stan Van Gundy's, but I know I was getting ready for Pops. And next thing you know, this news came down with around that same time, around 6:15, 6:30. So it was weird. It was one of those things where, you knew it was inevitable, but at the same time, the description that the league gave out was just so strange because earlier in the day, the Spurs injury report, as it was today, for tomorrow's game against Boston, just had Derek White as the only person who's out for the game. And then the description from the league is that neither team had the 8 players available to proceed with the game. So you're already thinking like, oh, okay, this is just the worst thing possible. And I'm glad that they just kind of took that extra precaution because what we saw with Washington, what we're seeing with Memphis now is probably the worst case scenario where a team has to be out for more than a week. They miss out on, I think Washington missed like 6 games. I mean, how are they going to make those games up? I know that the second half of the season, the schedule has not been released, but at the same point, they are under this time frame where they want to do the playoffs in April. They want to get them, May, June, July, kind of get back to that normal calendar. So I don't see any way how Washington makes up 6 games. So if they're overly cautious with any sort of situation that arises, even if it's an hour and a half before tip-off, I'd rather take the 1-game postponement as opposed to the situation with the Wizards or what Memphis is going through right now, and as Jeff mentioned, Boston, where you have to miss multiple games, and then you really kind of get into a situation where you're kind of behind the 8 ball and trying to figure out when to replay these games.
I was right with you, RJ. I was trying to log into the pop session, and the message, we're waiting for the Spurs PR to let you in. Kept on spinning and spinning and spinning, and I said, okay, something's up. And at this time, I didn't know, and then that's when I saw it. I said, oh, okay, that explains it. What got me kind of, my red flags up was how close it was to game time. I mean, it almost felt like when the pandemic hit the NBA last season, when the team was warming up and you saw somebody rush down the court in Utah and say, stop the presses, this happened. That's the kind of vibe that I felt like, okay, this is bad. Something happened for them to get an hour and a half-ish to game time, and then boom, call it off. But they did the prudent thing, and I think that was the right thing to do. But the NBA knew this was going to happen. They planned for it. There's a reason why we have a first half schedule. There's a reason why there's a long break in the middle. There's a reason why we're getting these emails about games being canceled left and right, because they're going to be made up later down the road. I agree with RJ. How they're going to do that? That I'm waiting. That I'm curious to see. Like, how are they going to give Washington back the X amount of games that they missed, or Boston the X amount of games they missed? How are they going to factor that? That's going to be intriguing. How are we going to know when the Spurs and Pelicans play again? How's that going to play out? It's definitely interesting to see the NBA handle this. But the NBA could not have been, so naive to think that the players are going to stay indoors. Look at what's going on with Kyrie Irving. The guy could, it just vanished on the team. They have the ability to look at George Hill, who blatantly challenged the new COVID rules and saying, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. I'm a grown man and nobody's going to tell me what not to do. They got to deal with this now. They're not in the bubble. Now this comes with the territory. So nobody should be surprised if it happens.
Snitches over there.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I said they don't have no snitches over there like they did in the bubble.
Yeah. And even then, there were reports of players sneaking in people, breaking the boundaries for food, going for some wings, Lou Williams.
You got to have your wings here and there, man.
Yeah.
Well, especially the establishment he picked to get those wings. But
sometimes
they're apparently really good.
Yeah. So there you have the bubble, and you still had infractions. Now you have no bubble, and teams are kind of left to self-monitor. And you're seeing examples of players kind of fighting back on that. You mentioned George Hill, Kyrie Irving, James Harden. Fortunately for the Spurs, at least it hasn't been reported that there's been any infractions of any rules. But the Spurs seem to be, at least in the Zoom sessions, RJ, I think it was Trey Jones early in the season. He said, no, we're not allowed to get Ubers. Yolani saying, like, no, we're just told to go back to our apartments or our homes and just stay put. Pop took it out in the media saying that he couldn't take it being sequestered in the room on the road. So it happens, but that's just part of it.
Yeah. So we're going to go ahead and transgress and get into our last segment here. And this is actually something that I saw on KSAT, and I had been seeing it for a while. You all had promoted it. And it was the KSAT Explains, RJ. And it was the future of sports in San Antonio, from NFL to the Spurs. And I thought there was really a really well done segment that you all did, because it really kind of ran the gamut of a lot of different scenarios. Why we haven't had another professional sports franchise here. The last, I guess, semi-pro franchise we had was the short-lived San Antonio Commanders, and the Lions of American Football, which didn't even finish out the whole season. And it just seems like San Antonio is always the stepchild. We always get close. We get semi-pro teams. Even we had AAA baseball here, and now we've been delegated to just, I think it's a AA ball club now. So it's like, okay, what is going on? We at some point in time, me as a fan, you get tired of this. We've been here long enough where you hear a bunch of different scenarios, and we do have money here. But I think that the biggest issue is we don't have enough of it. We don't have enough corporate sponsors here. While the corporate sponsors are backing the San Antonio Spurs, and I'm sure that the San Antonio Spurs organization would welcome another professional sports franchise in the city. I don't think it's like a lot of Spurs fans are like to, or even like other fans should like to like, I guess it's like a little thing that they have behind the scenes here where it's like conspiracy theories. Oh, the Spurs are the guys kind of blocking everything from happening. No, I don't think that's it at all. I think it has more to do with maybe some of the infrastructure aging a little bit. We need to have more of a better public transportation system in place other than just via. We don't have light rail like a lot of the other big metropolitan cities have. For one, it's easier to get around and,
Mhm.
try to go around 1604, and get to other parts of the city. If you had a light rail system, and some, I don't guess like little segues here where you could go ahead and stop off and jump off from downtown and then get to Fiesta, Texas, get to SeaWorld, and then come back if you're a tourist and come into the heart of San Antonio and quickly go to your hotel room or get something to eat. Makes
Mhm.
travel easier. We do have a lot of good things going for us. Unfortunately, I just don't know what that magic mix would be to kind of get a professional sports franchise here. It's kind of the enigma that really bothers all of us here in San Antonio. Why we haven't gotten another professional sports franchise here. And we heard from everybody in your segment, even including Ron Nierenberg. I know we've even had our biggest supporter here too be very vocal about that in one Red McCombs. And like our good friend Chris Duell always says, when you call on Red, the deal gets done. He's always saying that on his radio show. But, at the end of the day, what do you think, has been the biggest obstacle here for us not getting a professional sports franchise?
Yeah, so this was an interesting episode. Obviously, I have a much more vested interest in this one, as opposed to, we've done some other, we kind of do weekly topics. So this one definitely was something that I was interested in kind of getting more information on and digging into. In speaking, I've talked with Mayor Nuremberg before, and for this episode, I interviewed him, and I think that he kind of broke it down pretty in simplistic terms. He said that right now, corporations don't necessarily move to San Antonio because they don't feel that San Antonio has the workforce and sort of the skill set to fill the need of what these corporations, either tech, which we see there a lot of tech firms, companies are moving to Austin. So that's really kind of figuring out that end of things. And the other part of this episode was also just kind of taking a look at where the Spurs are right now, and whether maybe they decide that they want to move out of the AT&T Center when that lease is up. I think that lease is up in 2024, 2025. And again, it's not, the Spurs do not own that building. It's the county that owns the building, and they kind of have this. They have a pretty good agreement with the county on sort of the revenue that they're getting from the AT&T Center, but in recent years, they've kind of done some interesting things. Getting rid of the Rampage, they got rid of the Stars, and it seems like they've been kind of reaching out a little bit more to people on the north side, maybe that Austin market. So I don't know if in a few years they really kind of think about the development on the east side has not gone as planned when the building was initially planned to be there, and so maybe they think about moving a little bit further north, and trying to reach more of the Austin, maybe that whole I-35 corridor crowd. So I think that San Antonio is going to continue to grow. I think we're the 7th largest city in population in the country, and I think that as we continue to get a more skillful workforce, I think that there'll be more opportunities down the road. But I still think that we're going to be a good few years away from a lot of these changes. And of course, the NFL is kind of the one that has just not been able to happen for us. So hopefully,
Yeah.
I think that maybe in the future, the mayor says about 10 years or so, he thinks that the NFL would really consider moving here. So we'll have to see about that. But it's definitely a hot button issue. And we will support these teams. Absolutely. The Commanders, I mean, you saw that they had some great support in the Alamo Dome. And as you said, they're not an NFL team. So, I think that there's definitely an interest here for more professional sports besides the Spurs. But the Spurs, they do kind of dominate the market, and I think that's something that they also enjoy having.
Yeah. So, Jeff, Why do you think San Antonio hasn't had another sports team, a professional sports team, here in our great city? What are we doing wrong, in your opinion?
I don't think we're doing anything wrong. The fans definitely come out, as RJ highlighted, whether it been the Commanders, whether it been the Gunslingers, whether even being the Talons, they come out. It's just lack of money. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, look at the Spurs. They're playing on the east side of town. You can't tell me right now they'll love to relocate back to downtown, but that's going to take money. And finding backers, asking the city and the citizens of San Antonio to pay again out of pocket, some sort of tax, hotel tax, all that good stuff. Do it one more time. It's going to be interesting. Now, look, you have you have the Cowboys, you have the Texans, the Mavericks, and everything. You look at the valuations that I believe it was Sportico recently released about the NBA, just the NBA franchises. The Spurs, 5 titles, more than the Dallas Mavericks, more than the Rockets, yet they rank below them in value.
More than the Knicks?
Well, just being in New York alone, I mean, will make you a team. I mean, just the market. It comes down to market. San Antonio is a landlocked city. It's far. It's closest to the coast, but not really. It's stuck in the middle, and it's not considered a metropolitan area. But I tell you this much: if I'm San Antonio, I just keep an eye on Austin. Austin is booming. Austin is becoming bigger. I mean, look what happened with the MLS and that debacle. I mean, they chose Austin. I mean, San Antonio was right there. They were going to get the franchise. It was going to be the second professional team at the time. I think RJ. I think the Stars had left already to Vegas. Yeah,
right. 2017. Yeah, is when the Stars left.
But yet the MLS, whatever happened, chose Austin. Mm-hmm. That should be. I would not be surprised that moving forward, you'll see Spurs games be played in Austin. Not Austin's Spurs game, but San Antonio Spurs games played in Austin. And I think that will put a lot of fear in a lot of Spurs fans. Why? Because even when the Spurs were winning titles left and right and deep playoff runs, they were still running in the red. It's a situation where you have fan support, but it's a small market. It's landlocked, dominated by hospitality, not financial and industry corporations. You put that all together, and I can see why professional teams shy away. Look what happened a few years ago with the hurricane hitting the Saints and the Louisiana, and the Alamo was packed. Mm-hmm. I think the NFL realizes there is a fan base there, and it's thirsty to have an NFL team.
Oh yeah,
just a team, but you can have all the fan support you want, but it comes down to dollars and cents. And right now, it doesn't make sense because of the lack of possible dollars to fund a team like an NFL team or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, just looking from the outside in, if you just remove your San Antonio glasses, just look at the city, and then look what's up I-35 in Austin, you'd be, whew. It would not come to surprise if there's like a shared team. Look at what they do with I think it was New York. The Giants don't play in New York; they play in New Jersey, but they're called the New York Giants. I would not be surprised something like that happens down the road for San Antonio and Austin, kind of a shared team like this. I'm making this up. This is the new MLS team. The San Antonio, Dragons, and they're playing like in San Marcos or something like that. Or
you have to give it a better name, San Antonio Chupacabras or something like that.
Okay, fine, whatever. But I think San Antonio can do it. It's just a matter of you got to have faith, you got to have interest, you from backers. I mean, look how close time after time back in the day, guys, when the Spurs were likely to leave. I mean, Sean Elliott has all but said it himself in various interviews that the Spurs were right there. They were going to leave. They were bound for Oklahoma City. I wish I could cite the source, but there is an interview with Elliott saying that, yes, that they knew that they were going to Oklahoma City. And then, Robinson, emerged, and, you had the backers, you had RJ, what was the name of that guy before it was like a general, like an army guy that was on the Spurs. Remember that guy?
Ooh.
um, general something. Like it was like some sort of backer came in and kind of saved the Spurs from moving, and then the Holtz came in, and then well, the rest is history. But yeah. I mean, I think it will happen. It just I think it'll be towards the end of my time here. I don't think it'll be happening next decade. I think
You're gonna put you in the dirt by the time we get.
yeah, I think I'll be in the dirt by the time it happens. I just can't see it. And
Oh man.
Well, and I know I actually got a lot of flack for that one Spurs, the one Spurs story about them, possibly. I didn't go as far as saying that they would play games in Austin, but I do think that they are absolutely trying to pull people from, north of San Antonio, either Cibolo shirts, New Braunfels, San Marcos, even Austin as well, because last year they were sending out surveys to season ticket holders asking them about Austin entertainment, how much do they enjoy things in the Austin area. So I definitely think that the Spurs are poking around. Now I don't think that they would ever leave San Antonio. I mean, that is my gut feeling that they would, but I definitely think that they want to pull more of that market, and if that means building an arena that's closer to Austin and out of the east side, then maybe that might be kind of the sort of compromise, I guess.
Yeah. Let me clarify. Yeah, I'm not saying they will relocate to Austin. I just think because they need to expand their base and get more money basically into their pockets and see a return, that could happen, where you'll just see the occasional San Antonio Spurs game played in Austin, not necessarily because they're moving to Austin, but I'm just saying, even if that were to happen, that will just once again stoke the fires. Well, the Spurs leave again, you saw what happened when the Stars were sold. You saw what happened when the Rampage was sold. And I think that would happen. I'm not saying I know anything that's going to happen, but it would not surprise me if moving forward, because of what RJ is saying, like they're surveying Austin, about Austin, and questions about Austin, that what better way to draw in fans from Austin than having Spurs games in Austin? I think right now there's buses, like party shuttles, that can come in from Austin to San Antonio to watch the games. So why not?
They actually do helicopter trips too.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Helicopter trips. And,
yeah.
And let me tell you, I don't know if you ever covered an Austin Spurs game, but the Cedar Park residents and the Austin residents, they do go out there. They're sellouts, but it's pretty packed for a G League team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one of the things that really surprised me was the exit of the San Antonio Rampage, because while they may not have had the biggest draw when it came to, semi-pro NHL teams, hockey teams, they were up there still. They weren't bad. They're kind of right in the middle of the pack, which is respectable, maybe drawing anywhere between maybe 6,000, 7,000 fans a game. That's still revenue that's being generated from that semi-pro team for both, the Spurs sports and entertainment, and also for the county, because they're splitting the sales from, concessions and whatnot, even parking. So why they just got up and, decided to sell the team, to me, it just seemed like they just weren't interested in having that semi-pro sports franchise here. They wanted all their efforts to be in, and their focus to be in, regards to the San Antonio Spurs, and pushing that brand of moving forward. Because to me, at the end of the day, it's a business decision. If something's not making you the revenue, no matter how you feel about it, no matter what it means to you from a personal standpoint, if you're operating in the red, you got to let it go. And I think that's ultimately, at the end of the day, that's what was the driving decision behind letting the Rampage go. It just wasn't generating enough revenue to sustain it long term. So instead of, trying to put more money into that and really make it where they needed it to be from a financial perspective, they went ahead and decided, let's go ahead and put all our efforts into really upping the brand and getting more exposure for the San Antonio Spurs themselves. That way they can make more money. As we saw, from the Sportico evaluation, I believe they were worth somewhere in the neighborhood of $2.1 billion. Was that correct, Jeff?
Yeah, it was covered around there. And here's the thing too: would you rather the whole family, sell off the Rampage of the Stars or the Spurs? I think that's what it comes down to. Right? I'd rather see that. And I know fans turned out for the Rampage. I know fans turned out for the Stars, but if they're still a business, remember the NBA players say it too. It's a business, and this is what the NBA is. It is a business. There's a reason why it's called NBAE, entertainment. It's a business of entertaining people, and if their business entertainment is not making money, then they're going to have to liquidate, and they liquidated, and they made some money in return with the Stars and the Rampage. I'd rather have that than San Antonio Spurs. But there are times, though, and I don't know how you feel about this, RJ and Joe, but times where I'm surprised the Spurs, San Antonio still has an NBA team. I'm still like sometimes like I wonder. I'm shocked it's never relocated or been sold off.
Yeah, I just think that they're due at some juncture here, RJ, for a new facility. And as you said, they keep poking around and wanting to get more of that younger and fan base over in Austin and San Marcos, and people that are more educated and have money, that they want them to come in here and spend that hard-earned money here to generate revenue. Eventually, I believe they're going to find some type of segue here where they're going to come to terms, and maybe we'll see a new facility being built somewhere on the outskirts of San Antonio. I mean, what do you think in closing here, RJ?
Well, to me that is the most likely scenario, is that they move out of the east side, because again, that it was to be this like huge development when it was built. I wasn't here in San Antonio at the time, but from my understanding, it was supposed to be restaurants and shops and everything was supposed to be around the AT&T Center. And obviously that has not happened. The center's been open for about 20 years now. So, if it hasn't happened by now, who's to say it'll ever happen? So I think the most likely scenario is that they do try and build some sort of facility a little bit further north. And, I kind of like, what Jeff was saying, were that are we surprised that the Spurs are still here? At one point, I think I would have been. I feel like now, especially after I saw that valuation, that $2 billion, I don't know how they would ever get the full amount of the pie as they do here. That's sort of my thinking, is that they get so much of the corporate pie here because they are the only major pro franchise that they seem to be doing pretty well. I think in that evaluation, I think they were the top mid-market team above Portland, above Milwaukee, who just opened up a brand new arena up there for the Bucks. So I think if anything, we're talking about a new arena, and because, the AT&T Center also does not draw anything else except concerts too. I'm sure that they would like to have maybe host an NCAA tournament round or, something to that effect. Similar to kind of what the Alamo Dome is getting, but the Alamo Dome is just at a great location right now when it comes to hotels and the convention center. So yeah, I think moving up north a little bit is probably the most likely scenario.
Well, there you go. So we're going to go ahead and bring this episode to a close here. But before we do, I'm going to go ahead and give all of you an opportunity to go ahead and plug yourselves where the fans can go ahead and follow you guys on social media. We'll start with you, RJ.
All right. Well, yeah, on Twitter, it's at KSATRJ, KSATRJ. Pretty simple. And yeah, just follow, everything that we're doing on social media. Also get to, do some live stuff for our 9 a.m. show and, a lot of stuff on our website as well. So make sure you just check that stuff out. We also have a Spurs newsletter where we kind of mix in a lot of like the on the court stuff, but also off the court things as well. So yeah, if anyone out there wants to check that out, more than willing, be my guest.
Yeah, make sure you go and follow and like RJ over there on Twitter. He does great job. He does great work, and KSAT does a great job of delivering the content that Spurs fans love to see. And the same thing goes with our good friend Jeff Garcia, who has become the Spurs insider here in San Antonio, who is well known, especially on the airwaves, where he comes out quite often with our friend Chris Duell, which you just came out this morning, I believe, talking Spurs news. So, Jeff, where can they follow you on Twitter?
Yeah, shout out Chris Duell. I appreciate that. He's always knocking on my door saying, "Hey, you want to talk Spurs?" I'm like, "Okay, I guess. Yeah, sure, not a problem." But follow me on Twitter at Jeff G Spurs Zone, and also subscribe to Locked On Spurs. We have Locked On Celtics host John Corrales for this episode that's coming up. Should be up by now, if not soon. Talking about the Spurs and Celtics game tonight, and it'd be interesting to hear what an outsider perspective about your silver and black is. And yeah, you got to hear what he has to say about LMA. It's definitely an interesting thing to hear, especially for those of y'all who want him out of uniform. But other than that, News 4 San Antonio and Fox 29 San Antonio, the Spurs Zone, we got you covered, whether it be from Austin Spurs news to what Lonnie Walker had to say about Devin Vassell to what even Keldon Johnson had to say about the veterans. It's all there at the Spurs Zone. And appreciate everybody who gives me a follow. And I apologize now for all the nerd stuff, but there's sometimes, man, I got to break away from this constant coverage of Spurs, and it helps re-energize me. It helps me.
Don't get him started, RJ, because he won't stop.
Oh, no. Before this podcast, I was like, okay, this is like worlds colliding here. This is like the MCU when it's, X-Men and everything. Yeah, this is the perfect blend of everything. And no, I agree. I'm totally into everything. I actually had a full conversation earlier today about WandaVision, and I'm like, okay,
yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely love that stuff, Jeff, and you do a great job, man.
Yeah, just started with Star Wars, RJ. That's a whole other animal.
What you say, Joe? I lost you there.
I said, I told RJ not to get you even started with Star Wars, because that's a whole different animal right there.
Well, it depends. If it's the new trilogy, then don't go there. But if it's in the past and the Disney Plus stuff, then I'm good. I'm good with that. But if it's anything to do with the new trilogy, don't.
You want to see an angry Jeff? Start mentioning the new trilogy, and he'll go off. Yeah. He gets
angry. Skywalker, not feeling that.
No,
I haven't even seen it yet. I refuse to see it.
Wow.
The Last Jedi just wrecked it for me. I remember kind of like that. What did I just see? Like, that's what I felt like when I left the theater. So
it destroyed him. He physically was ill.
He couldn't report to work for like 2 weeks.
No, I know, right? I'm actually, just a quick aside, I'm actually surprised, like Sinclair News 4 and all them, having asked me, like, do you want to do some like nerd stuff, because that's, pop culture is kind of a thing now in today's society. Yeah. I'm surprised they never have, but the one time they did, it was to celebrate the anniversary of Knight Rider 2000 being filmed in San Antonio back in the day. And they threw it out there. I'm like, you okay with that? I was like, yeah, whatever, And I think I put more effort in that than anything I did with the Spurs thing. This is awesome.
Like, here's my chance.
Yeah, here's my chance. Yeah. So, yeah, exactly. So, again, I know Spurs fans are like, all right, Jeff, yeah, we know you hate the new trilogy, and we know you love, the fight of the century, Kong and Godzilla coming up, but it's just, I have to break away, man. I just have to break away, and that's like my outlet, just to like de-stress.
Yeah, we get trapped in the rabbit hole sometimes, RJ. We go on some big nerd rants and discussions there. We'll tag you in there when we get a good one.
I did RJ a courtesy and not tag him anymore, because I felt like, okay, I think this is a RJ, man.
If it's a worthwhile one, we'll tag you in it, man. We'll tag you in there.
Feel free to tag away. Yes, I always like a good nerd debate.
There you go. WandaVision's a good one too. So definitely, I'm in love with that series. I like it. I can't wait for the next
Easter egg, right? The X-Men logo and the painting.
Yeah.
Go back. Look at the recent episode. There's a painting and it has the X-Men logo on it. It's a red X surrounded by yellow.
Yeah, that's a theme.
That on that first watch. Yeah. Wow, very interesting.
Yeah. All right, so we'll go ahead and bring the show to an end here before we take up any more time, because I know I'm hungry and RJ's hungry. I want to go get something to eat. So with that said, for RJ Marquez and for Jeff Garcia, I'm Joe Garcia. Thank you all for watching and listening to another episode of the Two Shots Podcast. And like we always say, spread the love, stop the hate, be kind. We're